The dining room felt like a tomb. 23 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. Not with papers served by a lawyer. Not with tears and apologies behind closed doors. But here, at my family Sunday dinner table, with my grandmother's china gleaming under the chandelier and the smell of her famous pot roast filling the air. My husband David walked through the front door of my childhood home like he owned the place. His hand intertwined with fingers that weren't mine. Manicured nails painted blood red. A woman I'd never seen before, 20 years younger than me, wearing the kind of dress that cost more than most people's rent. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. My sister's fork hung suspended halfway to her mouth. My mother's face drained of color. Dad's knuckles went white around his wine glass. But David? David smiled. That same charming smile that had once made my heart race. Now it felt like ice water in my veins. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Sarah, he announced, his voice carrying across the sudden silence like a gunshot.
My fiancée?
The word hit me like a physical blow.
Fiancée.
Not girlfriend. Not companion.
Fiancée. I was still married to this man.
Still wearing his ring. Still paying half the mortgage on the house where he'd been screwing someone else for God knows how long. My grandmother, 87 years old and sharper than any lawyer I'd ever met, slowly placed her napkin beside her plate. Her pale blue eyes, the same ones I'd inherited, studied David with the kind of intensity that had made grown men confess their sins in boardrooms across 3 decades. How wonderful, Grandma Rose said, her voice honey-sweet and deadly quiet. And when exactly did this engagement happen, David? Sarah giggled. Actually giggled. Like this was some romantic comedy instead of the complete destruction of my life playing out in real time. Last weekend, David replied, puffing his chest out like a peacock. We flew to Paris. I proposed at the Eiffel Tower.
Paris.
While I'd been home, wondering why he'd been so distant lately. While I'd been making excuses for his late nights and weekend business trips. While I'd been blaming myself for whatever had gone wrong between us. The room tilted. Everything I'd built, everything I believed in, crumbling like sand between my fingers. That's quite romantic, my mother managed, though her voice sounded strangled. But David, aren't you still? We'll handle the paperwork. David cut her off with a wave of his hand. Dismissive. Like I was nothing more than a legal inconvenience. These things are just formalities anyway. Formalities. 23 years of marriage. 2 miscarriages we'd grieved together. The nights I'd held him when his father died. The dreams we'd shared about growing old together. All of it reduced to paperwork and formalities. I found my voice somewhere in the wreckage of my shock. You brought her here, I whispered. To my family's home. While we're still married. David's mask slipped for just a moment. I caught a glimpse of something ugly underneath. Something that had maybe always been there, waiting. We're getting divorced anyway, he said. I'm just being honest about moving on. Honest. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Sarah squeezed his arm, looking at me with what might have been pity if it wasn't so condescending. I hope we can still be friends, she said. David's told me so much about you.
Friends.
This woman wanted to be friends. After destroying my marriage, she wanted to play nice over coffee dates and shared custody of the man I'd wasted my adult life loving. But Grandma Rose was still watching, still calculating. I'd seen that look before, when she'd negotiated billion-dollar deals with men who'd underestimated the little old lady in pearls. Sarah, darling, Grandma said, her voice like velvet over steel. What a lovely dress. Is that Valentino? Sarah preened, clearly delighted to be noticed. Yes, it is. David has such wonderful taste. He certainly does, Grandma agreed. And that ring. Gorgeous. May I? Sarah practically thrust her hand across the table, diamond catching the light like a weapon. 3 carats, easily. Emerald cut. The kind of ring I'd dreamed about when David had proposed, with his grandmother's modest solitaire. Grandma examined the ring with the practiced eye of someone who'd appraised more jewelry than most people had seen stolen. Beautiful, she murmured. Tiffany. Cartier, Sarah corrected proudly. David said only the best for his future wife. Future wife. While his current wife sat 10 feet away, watching her life implode in real time. David, my father finally spoke, his voice carrying decades of barely contained fury. What the hell do you think you're doing? I'm being honest for once, David replied. Instead of pretending everything's fine when it hasn't been fine for years. Years. He'd been planning this exit strategy for years while I'd been making dinner reservations for our anniversary. While I'd been buying Christmas presents for his mother. While I'd been living in a marriage that only existed in my imagination. You could have been honest with the conversation, my sister snapped. Instead of this sick little performance. It's not a performance, David shot back. This is my life. My choice. My choice. Like I was disposable furniture he decided to replace. But Grandma Rose was still focused on that ring, turning Sarah's hand this way and that, studying it like it held secrets. Tell me, dear, she said to Sarah, how long have you known David? 8 months, Sarah replied, basking in the attention. But when you know, right? It was love at first sight. 8 months. He'd been cheating for 8 months while I'd been wondering why he'd stopped touching me. Why he'd started working late every night. Why he'd stopped saying he loved me. 8 months, Grandma repeated thoughtfully. And, David, when did you buy this ring? David's confidence flickered. Just for a second. A few weeks ago, he said. Why? Grandma Rose smiled. It was the kind of smile that had preceded the corporate destruction of men twice her size. Because I remember this ring, she said quietly. The room went dead silent. Even Sarah stopped fidgeting with her hair. I remember it because I helped design it 30 years ago for my dear friend Margaret Stevens. The name hit the room like a bomb. Margaret Stevens, David's mother. This was Margaret's engagement ring, Grandma continued, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. The one she showed me when Robert proposed. The one she wore until the day she died 3 years ago. David's face went white. Sarah's smile cracked like cheap porcelain. You gave your mistress your dead mother's engagement ring, Grandma said, each word dropping like stones into still water. How romantic. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. That's impossible, Sarah whispered, looking down at her hand like the ring had turned to poison. David bought this for me. At Cartier. David, my mother said, her voice barely controlled. Margaret promised that ring too. To me, I finished, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. She promised it to me. When we had children. She wanted it to stay in the family. David's jaw worked soundlessly. Caught. Cornered. The charming mask completely gone now. Things change, he finally said, but his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. Some things don't change, Grandma Rose replied. Like theft. Like betrayal. Like giving away what isn't yours to give. Sarah was staring at the ring like it might bite her. This belonged to his mother? She asked, her voice small. His mother, who died believing David was a good man, my father said, standing up from the table. Who died believing her son had integrity. I have integrity, David snapped, but he sounded like a child caught stealing candy. You brought your mistress to family dinner wearing your dead mother's ring, my sister said, each word sharp as a blade. If you looked up pathetic in the dictionary, they'd use your picture. The fight was draining out of David by the second. Without his charm and confidence, he looked smaller somehow. Ordinary. How had I never seen it before? But Sarah was staring at him with dawning horror. You stole this from your wife, she whispered. I didn't steal anything, David protested. Margaret left everything to me. Everything except this ring, Grandma Rose corrected. This ring was specifically mentioned in her will. I was there when she wrote it. She left it to David, yes, but with explicit instructions that it should go to his wife when the time was right. That when David and his wife started their family, this ring would be for her. The words hung in the air like an execution sentence. But David never told his wife about the ring, Did he? Grandma continued. Because that would mean sharing something precious. Acknowledging that his wife mattered. That she deserved the same consideration as his mistress. I felt something breaking loose inside my chest. 23 years of small humiliations. 23 years of coming second to his work, his friends, his needs. 23 years of being taken for granted while I worked 2 jobs to help pay for his dream house, his dream car, his dream life. And now this. The final insult. His mother's ring, promised to me, stolen and regifted to the woman who destroyed my marriage. You bastard, I whispered, and my voice carried across the room like thunder. David flinched. You absolute bastard. Your mother held my hand in the hospital during my 2nd miscarriage. She cried with me. She promised me that ring someday, when I was ready to heal my heart and try again. And you gave it to her. Sarah was looking between us like she'd stumbled into someone else's nightmare. David, she said slowly, you told me you bought this ring for me. You told me it was special because you picked it out just for me. I did pick it out, David said desperately. I picked it from my mother's jewelry box. For your wife, Grandma Rose added helpfully. Not for your girlfriend. The word girlfriend hit Sarah like a slap. She yanked the ring off her finger and slammed it on the table. I'm not your girlfriend, she said, her voice rising. I'm your fiancé. We're getting married. With what? My father asked. He's still married to my daughter. That makes you nothing but a mistress with expensive taste. Sarah whirled to face David. You told me the divorce was already happening. You told me it was just a matter of filing papers. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. It will be, he finally managed. We just need to work out the details. What details? I asked, finding strength I didn't know I still had. What exactly are you planning to work out, David? He couldn't meet my eyes. The house. The investments. Your retirement account. My retirement account. The one I'd been contributing to for 15 years while he'd blown money on business lunches and golf memberships and weekend trips to Paris with his mistress. You want half of my retirement account, I said. The account you never contributed to because your money was too busy paying for your other life. I supported you, David protested weakly. I worked full-time. I shot back. I paid half of everything. I bought the groceries and cooked the meals and cleaned the house and managed your social calendar and remembered your mother's birthday and sent Christmas cards to your family and pretended to be happy while you treated me like hired help. Each word felt like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. What exactly did you support, David? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I supported you. Sarah was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. You don't support her? She asked. It's complicated, David muttered. No, Grandma Rose said firmly. It's simple. David is a user. He's used my granddaughter for 23 years, and now he wants to use you. The only difference is the age of the woman he's lying to. Sarah's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, hurt, anger, calculation. How old are you? She asked me. 45. I'm 28, Sarah said slowly. When you married him, I was 5 years old. The math hung in the air between us. He's going to trade me in two, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. In 20 years, when I'm 48 and he's 70, he'll find another 28-year-old and go through this whole song and dance again. David was sweating now, looking around the table like a cornered animal. That's not true, he said. Sarah, you're different. We're different. I bet you told her the same thing, Sarah replied, nodding toward me. I bet you told her she was special, that she was different from all the other women. The accuracy of the statement hit like a physical blow. He had said those things. When we were dating, when we got engaged, when we married. I was different. I was special. I was the one he'd been waiting for. Until I wasn't. This is ridiculous, David said, trying to regain control. We're leaving. But Sarah didn't move. No, she said quietly. We're not. David blinked. What do you mean, we're not? I mean, I'm not going anywhere with you. I mean, this whole thing is sick and twisted, and I want no part of it. Sarah picked up the engagement ring from the table and held it out to me. "This belongs to you," she said.
I'm sorry.
I didn't know. I stared at the ring. 3 carats of bitter irony. The symbol of promises made to me, but given to someone else.
Keep it, I said.
Sell it. Consider it payment for opening my eyes. I can't. Yes, you can. It's cursed anyway. Everything David touches turns to poison eventually. At least you can get something valuable out of the wreckage. Sarah closed her fist around the ring, tears starting to fall. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "You didn't know," I replied. "But now you do. What you do with that knowledge is up to you." David was looking between us like he'd lost control of his own narrative. "This is insane," he said. "Sarah, we're in love. Don't let them poison that." "You poisoned it yourself," Sarah shot back. "With lies. With theft. With treating people like they're disposable." She stood up from the table, dignity gathering around her like armor. "I'm going home," she announced. "My real home. Not whatever fantasy you've been selling me." "Sarah, wait." But she was already walking toward the door, high heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a countdown timer. David started to follow her, then stopped. Looked back at the table.
At me.
At his burned bridges and ruined plans.
"This isn't over," he said.
"Yes, it is," Grandma Rose replied calmly. "It's been over for years. You were just too selfish to admit it." David's face twisted with something ugly.
"Fine," he spat.
"But don't expect this to be easy. Don't expect me to just walk away and give you everything." "I don't want everything," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "I just want what's mine. My half of what we built. My retirement account. My dignity." "You'll get a lawyer then?" "I already have one." I lied smoothly. But looking at Grandma Rose's approving nod, I knew it wouldn't be a lie for long. David stormed out, slamming the front door hard enough to rattle the windows. The silence that followed felt different from the earlier shock. This silence had weight, substance, the kind of quiet that comes after storms, when the air finally clears. Well, my mother said finally. That was certainly dramatic. My sister started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, but the kind of deep, cleansing laughter that comes when absurdity reaches its natural conclusion. "Did he really think that was going to work?" she asked. "Did he really think he could just waltz in here with his mistress and we'd all smile and pass the potatoes?" "He's been living in his own world for so long," I replied. "He forgot other people exist in it too." Grandma Rose reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "For what?" "My marriage just exploded in your dining room." "For not begging him to stay. For not making excuses for his behavior. For recognizing that some things can't be fixed, only survived." The words hit deeper than I'd expected, because part of me had wanted to beg. Part of me had wanted to promise I'd change, be better, try harder. 23 years of conditioning don't disappear in one evening. "I loved him," I said quietly. "I know you did, sweetheart. But love isn't enough when there's no respect. When there's no basic human decency." "What do I do now?" Grandma Rose smiled, and for the first time all evening, it was purely warm. "Now? Now you take your life back. You make decisions based on what you want instead of what he'll allow. You remember who you were before you spent 20 years trying to be small enough to fit in the space he left for you." "I don't remember who I was." "I do," my mother said softly. "You were fierce. You were going to conquer the world. You had plans and dreams and opinions about everything." "I still have opinions," I protested weakly. "About his opinions," my sister corrected. "When's the last time you made a decision without wondering what David would think?" The question hung in the air. When was the last time? When had I stopped being a person and started being David's wife? "The house," I said suddenly. "He'll want to sell the house." "Do you want to keep it?" Grandma asked. I thought about it.
Really thought about it.
The mortgage payments. The maintenance. The memories embedded in every room.
No, Iresa.
I hate that house. I never wanted it in the first place. I wanted the little colonial with the garden, but David said it wasn't impressive enough. So let him have it, Dad suggested. Let him figure out how to pay the mortgage on his salary alone. Can I do that? Honey, Grandma Rose said, you can do whatever you want. That's what he never understood. You always had choices. You just chose to stay. But choosing to leave is just as valid. The concept felt foreign, revolutionary. For 23 years, leaving had never felt like an option. Marriage was work. Marriage was compromise. Marriage was sticking it out through the rough patches. But what if the rough patch was the entire relationship? I need to call a lawyer, I said. I'll give you Janet Morrison's number, Grandma replied. She's expensive, but she's worth every penny, especially for cases like this. How do you know about cases like this? Grandma Rose's expression grew distant. Because 35 years ago, your grandfather tried to pull the same stunt. Brought his secretary to a company Christmas party and introduced her as his assistant. But he was too stupid to remember I owned 49% of the company. The family history I'd never heard. The story behind Grandma's legendary business reputation. What happened? I bought him out, divorced him, kept the company and the house, and my self-respect. Best decision I ever made. You never told me. Because you needed to figure it out yourself. Nobody can save you from a bad marriage except you. Nobody can make you value yourself except you. The truth of it settled in my bones like medicine. I'm scared, I admitted. Good, Grandma said firmly. Scared means you're taking it seriously. Scared means you understand the stakes. But don't let scared paralyze you. Let it motivate you. My phone buzzed. A text from David. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. Come home. Home. To the house I'd never wanted. To the life I'd been enduring instead of living. To more years of slow suffocation, disguised as marriage. I deleted the text without responding. What now? My mother asked, watching me put the phone away. Now I eat Grandma's pot roast, I said. And tomorrow I call Janet Morrison. And the day after that, I figure out what my life looks like when I'm the only one living it. The pot roast was cold by then, but it was the best meal I'd had in years. Every bite tasted like freedom. As I drove home that night, past the house David wanted me to come back to, I kept going. To a hotel downtown.
To a room that was mine alone.
To the first night in 23 years when I didn't have to consider anyone else's needs before my own. The next morning, Janet Morrison's paralegal scheduled me for Thursday. By Friday, the papers were filed. By the following week, David's lawyer was calling with settlement offers. It took 6 months to unravel 23 years. 6 months of negotiations and asset division and arguing over who kept the coffee maker. 6 months of David alternating between rage and manipulation, trying every angle to keep control. But Grandma Rose was right. The scared feeling had transformed into something harder, more determined. Every time David tried to intimidate me into accepting less than I deserved, I remembered the sight of Sarah wearing my ring. I remembered the casual cruelty of his public betrayal. The final decree came through on a Tuesday. David got the house he'd wanted so badly, along with the mortgage payments he couldn't afford alone. I got my retirement account, my car, and enough cash to put a down payment on the colonial with the garden I'd dreamed about 24 years ago. Sarah had sold the ring, just like I'd suggested. She'd used the money to go back to school. We'd never spoken again after that Sunday dinner, but I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd broken up with David the same night. That she'd moved back in with her parents and was studying to become a nurse. David, according to the same source, was dating a 25-year-old fitness instructor. Some patterns never break. Some people never learn. But some people do. I planted tomatoes in my new garden that spring. Tomatoes David had always said were too much trouble, too messy, not worth the effort. They were the sweetest tomatoes I'd ever tasted.